What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our college football channel. If you're wondering where I've been, why I haven't been posting much lately, I was just really waiting on that first weekend of March Madness to get out of the way because I know a lot of people still focused on college basketball and the tournament's still going on. But we will be ramping up the college football videos starting this week, and we're going to continue to look at which teams I think will be better or worse heading into 2021. We've done this for the SEC already. Going to go through the other Power 5 conferences now, and I'm going to have a lot more for you on some teams. The reason for that is because I recorded videos for our team channels, so we're talking Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. I've already recorded those videos, and I went a little bit more in depth. I'm going to more quickly go through the other teams, so you'll see those videos in this video at the end. But first, we're going to quickly go through the other teams. And again, I just can't spend as much time on all of these teams. And of course, we do have these team channels. If you're a fan of Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, we have a team channel for all of those teams. We have about, I think, 21 team channels covering the top teams in college football. So go check those out. Go subscribe if you're a fan of one of those teams. And so we're going to go through the other teams here, and then I'll show you those teams I just mentioned. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to do something a little bit different, something new that I've never really done before. I have no idea how it's going to work out, but we're going to give you kind of a projected look at the standings based off of teams going up or down, whether I think they're going to be better or worse in 2021. I'll explain that again towards the end of the video. So let's get into it here. We'll start, and we're going to go alphabetical order with the teams that we have not, again, gone in depth on. Those will be at the end. Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan, starting with Indiana. Indiana was 6-2 last year. One of those losses, of course, coming in the bowl game to Ole Miss. They were second in the Big Ten East. And you look at this team heading into 2021, and you've got to like what you see. They have a ton of production coming back. You look at where they rank nationally. They're number 24 in the country in returning production. 80% of their production coming back. 80% on offense, 81% on defense, and it's just going to be a loaded team. It's a team that I think might have the best shot at challenging Ohio State this year. You lose Stevie Scott, you lose Watt Fillier at wide receiver, two really good players, two big losses on offense, especially Stevie Scott. He was their main guy at running back. And yeah, it's going to be tough to replace those guys, but you just look at the big picture here for Indiana. They've got a ton of production coming back. Really, again, a chance to be a really good team this year. You look at some transfers they bring in. They bring in DJ Matthews, a wide receiver from Florida State who's proven that he can be a big-time player. Also, Ryder Anderson on the defensive line, guy from Ole Miss who could make an impact for them potentially. You look at the defensive side of the ball, they have some losses on the defensive line. They lose a safety. I mean, that's about it. Indiana, again, brings back a lot in 2021. So we talk about better or worse for this team. It's kind of a tricky one because I think Indiana was a little bit overrated last year. This was a good team. Were they a top 12 team, top 15 team? I don't know that they were that good, but I think they were a top 25 team. I think the Ole Miss game did show us a little bit about this team, and maybe the fact that they were a little bit overrated. And just the fact that the Big Ten was down last year, I think that's clear. And they took advantage of that. But it was still a good team. So when we're talking about 2021, I mean, this team I think has a chance to be a little bit better. But as far as the big picture, are they a top 15 team again? Are they better than that? Are they worse than that? I think they're in that same category. I think this is a top 15 team. But given the fact that that's where they were last year, I'm going to say that this team will be about the same. I think there's potential, again, for this team to be a surprise team that could maybe challenge Ohio State in the East, and I think they will be a top 15 team. So I'm going to say that Indiana will once again be in that same category among the top teams in the Big Ten, top 15 team in 2021. Let's go now to Maryland. Maryland is a team that showed flashes last season. You know, they didn't have a great record at the end of the day, but at times it looked like a team that had a chance to be really good. Looking ahead to 2021, they bring back 86% of their offense, 85% of their defense. They're actually ranked number 10 in the country in returning production. So you've got a lot of production coming back, including quarterback to his brother, of course, Talia Tagovailoa. That's going to be big for them, having that experience back at that quarterback spot. I think we saw, again, the flashes from Maryland last year. I think we see a little bit more of that in 2021. I think this team will be better. I'm going to say Maryland will be even better this upcoming season. Let's go now to Michigan State. Michigan State was 2-5 last year, finished at the bottom of the Big Ten East. Looking ahead to 2021, this team, they're kind of middle of the road in returning production. They bring back 80% of their offense. That's actually 37th in the country, but just 59% of their defense. That's 99th in the country, and that's an issue because if you want to bring a lot of production back, if you're Michigan State, you want to bring it back on defense because the offense was not that great last year. And until they get the quarterback spot figured out, until they can get a little bit more explosive on offense, I don't really see this team doing much better. So I'm going to say that Michigan State will be about the same in 2021. Let's go to Rutgers now. 3-6 last year, actually 5th in the Big Ten East. I think it was a little bit of the same thing that we talked about with Indiana. I think Rutgers was a good team last year, a much better team and a much improved team. But were they one of the middle of the pack Big Ten team? I don't know if I would go that far. I think they just took advantage of the Big Ten being down. A lot of opportunities to get wins last year, and they were able to take advantage of those. They were able to get, again, 3 wins. I think Greg Schiano did a phenomenal job in his first year back there at Rutgers, and I think that this team, this program it's heading in the right direction. Rutgers will once again be a respectable team, and I think they'll be respectable again this year. But we're talking about 3 wins in the Big Ten. Are they going to be able to do better than that? That's kind of hard to imagine. You look at the production coming back. They bring back 67% of their offense. They do bring back their starting quarterback and some weapons around him. They bring back 61% of their defense, the production on defense. They only rank, though, 82nd in returning production, and that's not a great number. I again think that this program is heading in the right direction. I think they'll be pretty good again next year, but better than last year, I'm going to say no. I think this is another team that'll be about the same in 2021. 2020 was a disaster for Michigan. This was not a team that I was really high on coming into last year just because of all the losses that they had and the guys that had opted out and all of that. But I didn't expect 2-4. I didn't expect a losing record for Michigan. It was just a rough year. So you look ahead to 2021. Will they be able to get it turned around? That's the big question, of course. And they made some changes in their coaching staff, and maybe it'll pay off. We'll have to wait and see, obviously. But when you look at how everything kind of went against them last year, the injuries, COVID, and just everything that's kind of went against Michigan, you have to expect this team to at least be a little bit better. I mean, it can't get much worse for the Wolverines. You look at what they have coming back. Cade McNamara, Joe Milton, both of those guys will be back. Neither one of them was overly impressive. I think if you're going to beat the top teams in the Big Ten, you're going to have to get better quarterback play. Does that mean that one of these guys gets better during the offseason, improves enough to where they can deliver for their team when it matters? Or will it be the incoming freshman, J.J. McCarthy, a 5-star recruit? Maybe he takes that job. Maybe he's the starter next year. Only time will tell. But when you just have options, I think that is a good thing. And I think among the 3 of them, they're going to get something to where they'll be better at quarterback than they were last year. Now, at running back, you lose Jack Charbonnet. He's gone, and that is a huge loss. I kind of question why he didn't play more myself. When you look at his speed, his explosiveness, I thought he was the most talented running back on the roster and really didn't play a ton last year. But Hassan Haskins is back. He'll be the go-to guy. Also, Blake Corum, another speedster, will be back. He was just a freshman last year and was very productive for them. Chris Evans, he was a senior. He's gone. But overall, I think they're going to be okay at running back. At wide receiver, good news for them is that Ronnie Bell will be returning. And they've got a lot of young talent at wide receiver. I think you're going to see improvement there with Henning and Jackson and Johnson, Roman Wilson, a bunch of young guys that I think will step up next year. And you're going to see, if you get better quarterback play with these talented young wide receivers, I think the passing attack for Michigan can be much better, much better. At tight end, they do lose Nick Eubanks, but Eric All will be back. there at that spot. Looking at the offensive line, Jalen Mayfield, he's going to be gone. I believe he was injured most of the year last year, but still, this is a very talented player that they would have liked to have had back. He was just a redshirt sophomore last season. Also, Zach Carpenter, who played center for them, he is going to be gone. He transferred. So other than that, everything looks pretty solid on the offensive line. It's not an area where I think you're overly excited about, but I don't think it's going to be a disaster or anything on the offensive line for Michigan. I think they'll be okay, but maybe not elite on the offensive line. Then we go to the defensive side of the ball. Kwity Paye is gone. He will be off to the NFL. Villain at defensive end, he transferred out. But the good news, again, Aiden Hutchinson will be back. We're talking about a guy that has All-America potential, was injured most of last year. That's good news to get him back. And then in the middle, the interior of the defensive line, Christopher Hinton will be back. That's big. Donovan Jeter, a guy that some thought would leave, he will be back as well. Mozzie Smith will be back. Carlo Kemp, he did leave. He was a senior. But overall, I think the defensive line will be pretty strong for them. Looking at the linebackers, Cam McGrone is gone. Big loss, but they return everyone else, including Josh Ross, who I think has a chance to be a breakout player next year. And again, the rest of the linebackers will be returning. Then you look at the secondary. And, I dissect these rosters every offseason. And I just didn't remember how young this team was in the secondary. I mean, it is almost all sophomores and freshmen, or they were sophomores and freshmen last year in the secondary. I'm on almost every player outside of Brad Hawkins, who's a senior and who will be back. This team was ridiculously young in the secondary. Daxton Hill will be back. He was one of the veterans. He was just a sophomore, and I think he has a chance to have an All-America type year next year. And I think these young guys will be better. And when you look at Michigan and their struggles, I didn't even realize this when I was doing some research for this video. They were 96th in the country in pass defense last year. This was a big problem for them, and I think youth was a big reason why. Well, these guys now are going to have a full offseason, a normal offseason to work to get better, and I think you will see a much better secondary in 2021 for Michigan. So when you look at all of this, and they do lose Cam McGrone, they do lose Carlo Kemp and Kwity Paye on defense. Those are big losses, but only 3 losses on defense. You lose a couple of guys on the offensive line. You lose Charbonnet, who transferred out. Also, Christian Turner transferred, didn't really play a whole lot. Nick Eubanks at tight end is going to be gone. Overall, though, when you look at this roster for Michigan, I think they have a chance to be significantly better in 2021 if they get good quarterback play, and that is the big key for Michigan. I think everything else is going to be there to where they can be better. Now, I'm not saying Michigan's going to beat Ohio State. I'm not saying they're going to go to the Big Ten championship game. I'm not saying they're going to win 10 games, but they were 2-4 last year. So going 8-4 is a significant improvement. But if they can get good quarterback play, I think you could see this team right there, maybe second or third in the Big Ten East behind Ohio State next year. I think they've got the overall roster talent. They've got depth. Really just getting that secondary to grow up and improve just a little bit and getting better quarterback play and having a better passing attack. You put those things together, Michigan could be better. I think they will be better. The question really just becomes how much better. Will Michigan be much, much better? Will they look like a different team? Will they be a team that can play with the top teams in the Big Ten? Or will they be a little bit better? They'll go to a bowl game. They'll beat the teams they're supposed to beat, but they really won't compete against, Ohio State. That will be the question that we will find out next year. But I think without a doubt, Michigan will at least be somewhat better. And so definitely they get the arrow up. Michigan should be better in 2021. The 2020 season did not end the way Ohio State wanted it to end. Well, they lost in the national championship. But still, when you look back at everything that this team went through with all the games that were canceled and all of that, still beating Clemson, getting the revenge against the Tigers, and then getting to the national championship, I still think it was a very good year for Ohio State. Let's just be honest here. Nobody was going to beat Alabama this past season. This team was just too good. This was a special team. I still think it's one of the greatest teams in the history of college football. So we look ahead at 2021, and will this team be better or will they be worse? That is the big question. And of course, we start off with Justin Fields. He is going to be gone. I know he had some struggles at times last year, but this is still an elite quarterback, an elite athlete. They are going to miss Justin Fields. And I think that's clearly the biggest loss from the 2020 season. Also, Trey Sermon at running back. He is going to be gone. So you're losing two big-time playmakers there. The good news for Ohio State, though, all of their receivers are going to be back. I know Mookie Cooper transferred, but he didn't really play or anything. So all of the receivers that contributed will be back. And so you talk about this offense, the skill positions, they're going to be really good there. And I even said last year, before the season began, I said that Ohio State had the best group of wide receivers in the country. Maybe not the top number one, number two receivers, but when you talk about 5-6 deep at wide receiver, I thought Ohio State had the best group, and they're all coming back. So this is a team absolutely loaded at wide receiver. Master Teague will be the guy to carry the load on offense more than likely. You've got Marcus Crowley back as well, and some other young players. They also added a 5-star running back this year in this recruiting class in Travion Henderson. We'll see what he can do. This was a big-time recruiting class for Ohio State, number 2 in the country according to the 24/7 composite. Several 5-stars on the roster, so that's all good. Offense looks really solid, except for that quarterback position, and then we also look at the offensive line. I think they're in pretty good shape there as well. They lose Wyatt Davis, and he was a great player, but everyone else will be back. Thayer Munford was a senior; he's going to be back. So you've got a really strong offensive line coming back. You've got really talented players at the skill positions. But that quarterback spot, again, is the big question for them on that side of the ball. When we look at the defense, the front seven, I think, was pretty solid for Ohio State last year. They had their issues in the secondary, and they don't lose too much on the defensive line. Jonathan Cooper will be gone. Tommy Togai will be gone at defensive tackle. He had a really good year last year. So you're losing two really good players on the defensive line, but everyone else is back, and they have good depth there. I think probably the biggest position where they're going to be missing guys is linebacker. You lose Baron Browning, Justin Hilliard, Pete Werner. We're not talking about 3 of the best linebackers in the country, but these guys were good. They were solid, and they will be missed. Veteran presences there at linebacker, all 3 guys. So I think that's a pretty big blow when you talk about losing all these guys at linebacker. Tough Borland as well. Big question mark for Ohio State there at that linebacker spot. And then in the secondary, Shaun Wade will be gone, cornerback. A lot of people think he was overrated, but again, look at what Devontae Smith has done to every player that's tried to guard him last year. This is still a very talented player. He was an All-American last year. So they'll be missing him. Marcus Williamson will be back. He's a safety that was a senior. He's going to be using his extra year of eligibility to come back. Josh Proctor, Marcus Hooker will be back at safety, Sevin Banks at corner. So you've got most of the guys back, really everyone outside of Shaun Wade. But this is a secondary that, again, struggled last year. So overall, when you look at this team, you look at the recruiting class that they have coming in, I think the overall roster talent for Ohio State in 2021 might be a little bit better than 2020. But it's that one big position, the quarterback position, where I have a big question mark. They've got talented guys. We'll see what they look like, but at this point, without seeing them on the field, it's hard to say that they're going to be better at quarterback and even going to be as good as they were with Justin Fields. Kyle McCord, a freshman coming in who's a 5-star. I think he's going to have an opportunity. You've also got C.J. Stroud and Jack Miller, who were freshmen last year. So there's going to be a really good competition there at quarterback. But again, the drop-off there and just the fact that we don't know what we're going to get from these young guys. Because of that, I think Ohio State is probably overall not going to be quite as good in 2021. Also, the linebacker position as well that I talked about, the leaders of the defense. You got a lot of guys missing there. A secondary that struggled. I don't really see anything that makes me think they're going to be a lot better there. So I think Ohio State is maybe not quite as good in 2021. But the good news is I still think they're clearly the best team in the Big Ten. And they might actually have a better chance to win the national championship just because that Alabama team is gone. I know we still have Alabama, of course, but it's not going to be the same Alabama team that we saw last year. So I think there might be a chance for this team to still go all the way. It's going to come down to that quarterback spot. The results at the end of the day should still be there. They should still, again, be Big Ten champs, right there for in line for a college football playoff spot, unless they slip up somewhere. And so, again, at the end of the day, the results might be better for Ohio State, possibly. But when we're just talking about how good this team is going to be, I do think the Buckeyes are a little bit worse in 2021. Penn State is a team that I was really high on in 2020. Thought this was a top 10 team. Thought it was a team that could maybe challenge Ohio State in the Big Ten East. Obviously, it did not go that way. It was a rough year for the Nittany Lions. They finished 4-5. And what was crazy about it is the fact that they started the season off with 5 straight losses, but then finished with 4 straight wins. So as bad as 2020 was, will 2021 be better, or is this thing headed downhill? And will it be an even worse season in 2021? That's what I'm going to give you my opinion on here. As you look back to that schedule, Indiana, that game could have gone the other way. They could have won that game. One call could have changed that game at the end with the touchdown. And they played Ohio State fairly tough. I mean, it's 38-25. It's not like they got completely blown out. But then the Maryland game came, and that was a rough one for them. They lose a close one in Nebraska, lose to Iowa, but they finally turned it around, beat Michigan, Rutgers, Michigan State, and Illinois. Now, they didn't exactly beat the best teams in the Big Ten, but still, I think this team was better than their record would suggest. So we're not necessarily going to say, will the record be better, because I think that's obvious, but we're going to talk about if this team will actually be better. And you look to 2021 and who's coming back. One thing I think gets overlooked is Journey Brown not being able to play, and also Micah Parsons, he opted out. Those were probably your best 2 players, your best player on offense, your best player on defense, didn't play at all last year, and that hurt them big time. I think the run game, not just losing Brown, but then also losing Noah Cain to an injury. So your top 2 running backs you don't have them. I think that put a lot of pressure on Sean Clifford. He did not play well. He definitely went down this past season from where he was the season before. You had some, all the COVID issues and everything. That shouldn't be a problem in 2021. At least, nope, it's not. So I think Sean Clifford will improve, and you've got Noah Cain coming back, a guy that would have been their number 1 back if he had stayed healthy. You've also got Devin Ford back, Kevon Lee, who wound up, I guess, getting a lot of the carries during the season last year, and also Kazia Holmes coming in there as well. He played a little bit last year. So this is a team that, when you look at the running game, this team is going to be in great shape. They've also got a transfer coming in from, I can't remember now who it was, from Baylor, John Lovett, another guy that they can plug in there. So you're going to have a lot of depth at running back, and if they can run the football better, I think that will take the pressure off of Sean Clifford, like I just talked about. And so then you got to look at the wide receivers. Those guys have to step up. TJ Jones, he transferred, not a big loss there. They've got Jahan Dotson coming back. He should be their number 1 guy at wide receiver. Cam Sullivan-Brown, Keandre Lambert-Smith going to be coming back. Parker Washington coming back, and some other guys as well. So I think the passing game will improve if the run game improves. Again, it kind of all works together, and again, we'll take some of that pressure off of Sean Clifford. Losing Pat Freiermuth will be big. That's a great tight end that they're not going to have. And also Zach Kuntz, he entered the transfer portal, but they do have Theo Johnson and Brenton Strange coming back. And I'm not even talking about the young incoming freshmen, because I really just don't do that on these early looks. But you've got the freshman class coming in as well, of course. They'll lose Michael Minnitt and Will Fries on the offensive line, 2 really good players. Also, C.J. Thorpe transferred out. Good news, though, Anthony Wiggin will be back. He was a senior, going to come back for his extra year, and I think the offensive line will be pretty solid. It's going to be, I think, okay. And again, when the offensive line plays well, the run game does better, takes the pressure off Sean Clifford, the wide receivers step up. All of this works together, and I think because it'll be a normal offseason, you'll see this offense improve by a lot in 2021. Now, on the defensive side of the ball, you got some big losses on the defensive line. Shaka Toney gone, Jason Owe, Shane Simmons, all these guys are going to be gone. These are big-time players, and they will miss them. I think the defensive line is the one area where you can definitely say this team will not be as good. Probably was their strength last year, so they're going to miss those guys. And then in the middle, Antonio Shelton and Judge Culpepper, they transferred out. You do have Fred Hansard back. and some other guys. So a defensive line I think will be okay, but it again will not be as good as it was last year. That's definitely an area where I think they're going to be down a little bit. At linebacker, Lance Dixon transferred out. Other than that, everyone else will be back, so they should be in good shape at that position. In the secondary, Donovan Johnson is gone. Not really a key there. Lamont Wade, that really the only guy in the secondary that they're going to miss at safety. He was a senior. He's gone. You had a couple of seniors decide to come back. Tariq Castro-Fields at corner. He will be back. He was a senior. Jaquan Brisker at safety also will be back. And this is a very talented player. So in the secondary, I think they're going to be in good shape. And again, when you look at the entire team, you could say maybe the offensive line takes a little bit of a step back, losing some key players. Defensive line won't be quite as good. But overall, I think this Penn State team should improve. I'm going to say they will be better in 2021. Having Noah Cain back at running back will be big, and I think it all starts there. You establish the run game. You take the pressure off Sean Clifford. Offensive line will have to play well. Receivers will have to step up. If they do that, this team can be really good offensively. And defensively, with pretty much everyone coming back in the back seven, if some guys can step up on the defensive line, Penn State has a chance to be a really good team. Now, are they going to be good enough to challenge Ohio State? I don't know if I'm ready to say that, but I do expect them to be much better. I think it's a top 25 team from start to finish in 2021, and a team that probably gets back up there to number 2 in the Big Ten East. Maybe Indiana is in their way. We'll have to see how good the Hoosiers are. But let's keep in mind, this team actually did finish 3rd in the East last year. So if they finished 3rd, they would be in the same spot. But again, I just think the team overall will be better. And again, those are my early thoughts on the Penn State Nittany Lions. All right, I've given you my early thoughts on every team in the Big Ten East, whether or not I think they'll be better or worse in 2021. And now I'm going to give you kind of a projection for the 2021 standings. But this is not an actual projection. It's not a prediction or anything like that. It's just a little formula I made. So if a team has an up arrow or down arrow, they will be able to move 2 spots ahead of a team that has the opposite arrow. So if a team has the up arrow and a team ahead of them has the down arrow, if they're 1 or 2 spots ahead, that team with the up arrow is going to move ahead of them. If a team does not have an arrow at all, then a team that's right above them or right below them can pass them. I hope that makes sense. It's kind of hard to explain. But this is what it comes out in the Big Ten East. And to be clear, this is not a prediction, but this is what it looks like. And I'll go ahead and tell you right now, I'll give you a spoiler. I'm going to pick Ohio State to win this division. I think Ohio State is the best team in this division. But simply looking at this little formula that I made based off of whether or not I think teams are going to be better or worse, this is how the standings would look based off of that. So again, don't read too much into this. It's just something I wanted to put together, and then at the end of the year, see maybe how accurate it is. And again, I don't think Ohio State's going to finish 3rd. I don't think they're going to finish 2nd in this division. I think they're going to win this division, and I'm going to go ahead and give you that prediction right now. But based off of this formula, Penn State, because they were in 3rd and they got the up arrow, that's going to allow them to pass a team ahead of them. That's Indiana. They did not get an arrow at all, and also allow them to pass Ohio State because Ohio State had the down arrow. Again, the gap between Ohio State and everyone else is so big that this formula doesn't exactly work in this specific scenario. But I think for other divisions, other conferences, it'll be interesting to see. But based off of that, Penn State does go to number 1 because I think they're going to be better. Indiana stays right there at number 2. Ohio State drops below them because they were just 1 spot ahead and they got the down arrow. So that would be your top 3: Penn State, Indiana, Ohio State. Again, I think Ohio State's going to be at number 1. I think Penn State and Indiana will be 2nd and 3rd. I don't know what order, and I haven't made that prediction yet. But those are the top 3 teams. So I think that is at least somewhat accurate. Again, Ohio State should be there at number 1. And then Maryland and Michigan. So both teams move up. Maryland, or both teams should be better, but Maryland does not move up because the teams directly ahead of them, you didn't have a down arrow with the team right ahead of them. So that's why they're not able to move up in the standings. Ohio State was too far ahead of Maryland for Maryland to be able to pass them. And then Michigan moves up from 6th to 5th. We expect them to be better this year. Again, I might go with Michigan over Maryland. I don't know what my prediction is going to look like at this time, but based off of last year's standings and if these teams will be better or worse, that's how it would look. Rutgers would drop to number 6 because I don't see them being better. I do see Michigan being better, so Michigan passes Rutgers. And then Michigan State stays there at the bottom. I don't really see any change there for Michigan State. So an interesting look at what the standings could potentially look like. Not a prediction, but just simply looking at where these teams are headed, what direction they're headed in, and how the standings could possibly look if things go in that way. So I'd love to get your thoughts on this. What do you think about this formula? What do you think about all these teams in the Big Ten East? And do you agree with the teams that I think are going to be better? Do you agree with the teams that I think are going to be worse? Even though the only team is Ohio State. Every team in the Big Ten East I think is going to be just as good or better except for Ohio State. So maybe that does open the door to the possibility of another team winning this division. Again, I just think that the gap between Ohio State and everyone else is so big that it's not going to be enough for another team to win this division. But if it's going to happen, I think it will be Penn State or Indiana. So again, give me your thoughts down in the comments below. Thank you for watching this video, and stay tuned for more here on the SG1 Sports College Football Channel.